Kong Doyen was not the kind of person anyone took seriously. At 28 years old, he had earned a reputation across the entire colony as someone who could fix anything but treated everything like a game. His co-workers called him the Eternal Child. His supervisor said he had the skills of a master engineer, but the attitude of a teenager. Doyen just laughed at all of it. Life was too short to be serious all the time, especially when you were stuck on a distant planet millions of miles from Earth. The colony on Kepler 442b was called New Horizon. It was humanity's newest outpost, built in the year 2287 on a world that looked like an endless desert painted in rust and orange. 2,000 people lived there, mining rare minerals and searching for signs of alien life. For 6 months, they had been studying something incredible. Ancient ruins that jutted from the desert like black teeth biting at the sky. The ruins were massive, ancient, alien, and completely sealed shut. Dr. Lee Borum led the research team. She was a brilliant scientist who specialized in alien archaeology, though until 6 months ago, she had nothing alien to actually study. Now she had the discovery of a lifetime, and it was driving her mad with frustration. The sealed gate at the entrance to the ruins refused to open. Her team had tried everything. Laser cutters melted against its surface. Electromagnetic pulses did nothing. Sonic drills broke. Even explosives left no mark. The black material absorbed everything they threw at it and remained perfectly smooth, covered in symbols nobody could read. Doyen did not care much about the scientific mystery. His job was simple and boring. He ran structural scans of the excavation site to make sure nothing would collapse and kill anyone. He checked for cracks, measured stress points, and made sure the equipment stayed functional. It was important work, but it was not exciting. So Doyen did what he always did when bored. He joked around. On a Tuesday afternoon during his lunch break, Doyen stood alone in front of the sealed gate. His friend Park Jimin was on the other end of his communication device, chatting about nothing important. They were talking about old Earth movies, the kind where heroes dramatically touch ancient artifacts and unlock hidden powers. "You should do it," Jimin said, laughing. "Touch the gate like you are the chosen one. Make it all dramatic." "Oh, I should." Doyen grinned. "Watch this. I am going to unlock ancient alien secrets with my mystical touch." He was joking. Completely joking. Everyone had touched that gate at some point. Scientists pressed instruments against it daily. Workers leaned on it during breaks. Nothing ever happened. Doyen placed his palm flat against a smooth black surface. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Jimin laughed through the communication device. Doyen started to pull his hand away. Then the symbols began to glow. Soft blue light rippled outward from where his hand touched the gate. It spread like water disturbed by a stone, flowing across the entire surface in waves. The symbols lit up one by one, creating patterns that hurt to look at. The gate began to hum, a deep sound that vibrated to the ground and into Doyen's bones. His handheld scanner, still running from his earlier work, began screaming with alerts. Energy readings spiked. Temperature fluctuated. Electromagnetic fields twisted into shapes that should not exist. Jimin. Doyen's voice had lost all its humor. His hand was still pressed against the gate, and he could not seem to move it. "I think something is happening." "What did you do?" Jimin's laughter stopped immediately. "I do not know." The hum grew louder. Across the entire excavation site, emergency alarms began wailing. Security systems detected the energy surge and automatically triggered lockdown protocols. Red lights flashed. Automated warnings blared from speakers. Dr. Borum's voice cut through the site-wide communication channel, sharp with panic. "All personnel, evacuate Sector 7. Energy spike detected." Doyen finally managed to jerk his hand away from the gate, but the glow did not stop. It continued spreading, faster now, covering the entire structure. The black ruins lit up like a beacon visible for miles across the desert. The ground began to tremble. Small stones bounced and danced around his feet. Security personnel sprinted toward him from all directions. Men and women in protective gear surrounded him, weapons raised, shouting orders he could barely hear over the noise. Someone grabbed his arm and pulled him back. Someone else scanned him with a detector, checking for radiation or contamination. Dr. Borum appeared, running faster than Doyen thought possible for a woman in her 50s. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock, and something that might have been excitement. "What did you do?" she screamed at him. "I just touched it. I just touched it as a joke." Nobody touches that gate anymore. New protocol as of now. But it was too late for protocols. The entire structure was alive now with light and sound. Energy readings continued climbing. The hum became almost painful, making people cover their ears. Deep inside the ruins, something massive was stirring. Something that had been asleep for thousands, maybe millions of years. Security detained Doyen within minutes. They pulled his hands behind his back, not roughly but firmly, and marched him toward the detention facility. He did not resist. He was too shocked to resist. His mind could not process what had happened. Dr. Borum shouted orders to her team. Scientists scrambled to set up monitoring equipment. The colony governor declared a state of emergency. Civilians were evacuated to shelters. Military units mobilized. Everyone prepared for something, though nobody knew what. Doyen sat in a holding cell, watching through a small window as the ruins continued to glow brighter and brighter. The gate was opening. Slowly, impossibly slowly, but definitely opening. After 6 months of effort, after all the technology and expertise humanity could bring to bear, it was opening because he had touched it as a joke. Inside the ruins, in chambers that had been sealed since before humans existed, something ancient stirred awake. Consciousness returned after an eternity of darkness. Systems activated. Sensors reached out, scanning the world outside. The Sentinel had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. And outside, in a detention cell, Kong Doyen sat with his head in his hands, wondering how a stupid joke had just changed the fate of humanity forever. The gate took 48 hours to open completely. 2 full days of agonizing slowness, while the entire colony held its breath and waited. Dr. Lee Borum did not sleep during that time. She stayed at the monitoring station, watching sensor readings climb and fall in patterns nobody understood. Her team worked in shifts, but she refused to leave. This was the moment she had dreamed about her entire career. Kong Doyen remained locked in detention. Guards watched him constantly, as if he might suddenly do something else catastrophic. He did not feel like joking anymore. Every few hours, someone came to ask him questions. What did you feel when you touched it? Did you see anything unusual? Do you have any alien ancestry? The questions were ridiculous, but Doyen answered them all honestly. He felt nothing special. He saw nothing unusual. His family came from Earth, ordinary humans for generations back. When the gate finally opened fully, revealing a massive chamber beyond, security forces surrounded the entrance with weapons ready. Governor Choi Miho stood with them, his face grim. He had sent emergency messages to Earth, but help was months away at light speed. Whatever happened next, they would face it alone. Something moved in the darkness of the chamber. It emerged slowly, stepping into the light of Kepler 442b's sun for the first time in millennia. The being stood 15 feet tall, a figure of silver and black material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Its body was humanoid, but clearly not human. Too tall, too perfectly proportioned, too smooth. Its surface reflected light in strange ways, sometimes appearing solid, sometimes translucent. The face was featureless except for 2 glowing blue eyes that swept across the assembled humans with cold intelligence. Security forces tensed. Weapons hummed with charging energy. Governor Mio raised his hand, ordering them to hold fire. The being spoke. The language was completely alien. Musical sounds mixed with harsh clicks and tones that human vocal cords could not produce. Nobody understood a single word. Dr. Borum frantically worked on translation software, feeding the sounds into computers, but the language matched nothing in any human database. Then something unexpected happened. Doyen's scanner, still sitting in the evidence locker of the security building, suddenly activated on its own. The small device began broadcasting through the building's speakers. The voice was mechanical, broken, translating fragments of what the being said. Marker detected, genetic sequence confirmed, activation protocol initiated, host located. Everyone in the security building froze. Dr. Borum abandoned her equipment and ran toward the evidence locker. The scanner continued its broken translation, piecing together bits of the alien language. The being outside moved. It walked past the armed soldiers as if they were not there. When one soldier stepped in its path, the being simply passed through him like he was smoke. The soldier screamed and fell to his knees, shaking but unharmed. The being continued forward with purpose, heading directly toward the detention facility. "Stop it," Governor Miho shouted. Weapons fired. Energy bolts and bullets struck the being's surface and absorbed harmlessly, like throwing stones into deep water. The being did not slow down. It reached the detention building, and the locked metal door simply melted away at its touch, metal dripping like wax. Inside his cell, Doyen stood up as the being approached. Terror filled every part of his body, but he could not move, could not run. The being towered over him, looking down with those glowing blue eyes. It reached out one hand and touched Doyen's forehead. Information flooded into his mind. Images, concepts, feelings, warnings, all pouring in at once. Doyen saw stars being born and dying. He saw civilizations rising and falling. He saw species he had no names for, building wonders across the galaxy. He saw something terrible consuming everything, a force of pure chaos destroying reality itself. He saw gates being built, sentinels being stationed, and genetic codes being planted across thousands of worlds. His legs gave out. The being held him upright with surprising gentleness. When it pulled his hand away, Doyen gasped for air. His nose was bleeding. His head felt like it might split open. But he could understand now. He could understand the being's language. "What are you?" Doyen whispered. The being's voice filled his mind, clear and precise. "I am Warden Prime, Sentinel of the Progenitor Alliance. I have waited 3 million years for activation. Your genetic structure contains the marker sequence. Your lineage was seeded by my creators. That is impossible. My family is from Earth. We are human. Your species evolved from genetic material my creators planted. All life on your world carries traces of our design. But your specific bloodline maintained the activation sequence. The probability was calculated at 0.003%. Yet here you stand. By now, security forces had surrounded the cell. Dr. Borum pushed through them, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Governor Miho stood at the entrance, listening carefully. "Why?" Borum asked. "Why did you do this?" Warden Prime turned those blue eyes toward her. Through Doyen, who now served as an unwilling translator, it spoke to all of them. My creators were the Progenitor Alliance. 17 species who achieved technological advancement beyond your current comprehension. We explored the galaxy for 1 million years. We built wonders. We thrived. Then we discovered something in deep space. An anomaly, a force we call the unraveling. Images appeared in the air, holographic projections from Warden Prime's body. They showed the chaos Doyen had seen in his mind. Reality tearing apart. Planets folding into impossible shapes. Stars flickering through multiple states of existence simultaneously. It consumed everything it touched. Warden Prime continued. We fought for 10,000 years. We lost. Before our final civilizations fell, we created a plan. We seeded thousands of worlds with genetic markers. We built gates. We stationed sentinels to wait and watch. We gambled that evolution would produce new species capable of continuing our war. Governor Miho stepped forward. "You want us to fight this thing? This unraveling? You have no choice. The seal is broken. The protocol is active. The unraveling will detect this activation. It will come. How long do we have?" Dr. Borum asked quietly. The holographic images shifted, showing star charts and trajectory calculations that made no sense to human understanding. 50 standard years. Perhaps less. It moves slowly across cosmic distances, but once it reaches inhabited space, it accelerates. It feeds on complexity, on life, on civilization itself. The room fell completely silent. Everyone processed what they were hearing. 50 years until something arrived that had destroyed civilizations millions of years more advanced than humanity. And if we refuse? Governor Miho asked. if we seal this gate again and pretend we never open it, Warden Prime's blue eyes dimmed slightly. Then your species will join mine in extinction. The unraveling does not negotiate. It does not stop. It simply consumes. Doyen found his voice again. Why me? Why did the gate respond to me specifically? Random chance. Genetic lottery. Fate, if you believe in such concepts. Your DNA contained the correct sequence. Kong Doyen spent every day for 3 weeks inside the ancient ruins with Warden Prime. He did not want to be there. He wanted to go back to his simple life-fixing equipment and making jokes with his friends. But the genetic marker in his blood made him special, made him necessary. When Warden Prime communicated, only Doyen could hear the words clearly. Others heard distorted sounds or felt vague impressions. Through Doyen, the Sentinel could speak to all of humanity. Dr. Lee Borum became his constant companion. She brought recording equipment, cameras, notebooks filled with questions. Every word Warden Prime spoke, she documented. Every image the Sentinel showed, she captured. This was the greatest discovery in human history, and she would not let a single detail escape. The ruins transformed around them. Sections that appeared to be solid walls opened, revealing chambers filled with technology humanity could barely comprehend. Holographic displays activated, showing star charts of the entire galaxy. Weapons that bent light itself emerged from storage. Armor that could exist in multiple dimensions at once waited in rows like sleeping soldiers. The Progenitor Alliance was formed 5 million years ago, Warden Prime explained one morning. Images appeared in the air showing 17 different alien species. Some looked vaguely humanoid. Others were completely bizarre. Creatures of energy, beings made of crystalline structures, entities that existed partly in other dimensions. We were not conquerors. We were survivors. We came together when we first detected the unraveling, approaching inhabited space. Show us, Borum requested, her voice trembling with scientific excitement and terror. Show us what you fought. The chamber darkened. A holographic projection filled the entire space around them. Doyen gasped. Even though he had seen fragments in his mind when Warden Prime first touched him, seeing it fully was different. It was worse. The unraveling looked like reality was being torn to pieces. Where it touched matter, things did not simply explode or burn. They ceased to make sense. A planet folded in on itself like paper, existing in multiple states simultaneously, then dissolved into cascading patterns of chaos. A star flickered through 1,000 different colors before unraveling into streams of impossible energy. Ships caught the edge simply stopped being ships. Their atoms forgot how to hold together in coherent forms. It moves slowly by cosmic measurements, Warden Prime continued. But once it touches areas with complex life, it accelerates. It feeds on order, on structure, on everything that makes reality stable. Governor Choi Miho had joined them for this presentation. He watched the hologram with his face growing paler by the minute. Behind him stood the Colonial Council, 12 men and women who helped govern New Horizon. They had come skeptical. They left believing. The progenitors discovered it at the edge of the galactic void, Warden Prime said. A place where stars are sparse and space is cold. At first, we thought it was a natural phenomenon, a region of unstable space-time. We sent probes. They stopped transmitting. We sent ships. They never returned. By the time we understood what we faced, it had already consumed 40 inhabited systems. Counselor Yoon Jaiwoo, a stern woman who rarely showed emotion, spoke up. You fought it for 10,000 years. You had technology millions of years beyond ours, and you still lost. We did not lose, Warden Prime replied. We delayed. We pushed it back. We bought time for the universe to produce new solutions. You are that solution. Doyen laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. We are supposed to succeed where 17 species failed? We barely understand half the technology in this room. We have only colonized 10 star systems. Earth still has wars over resources and territory. The progenitors failed because we were rigid, Warden Prime said. We applied logic. We built perfect strategies. We calculated optimal responses. The unraveling does not follow logic. It is chaos itself. Your species shows something we lacked: unpredictability, creativity, the ability to improvise when plans fail. That is a nice way of saying we are messy and chaotic, Borum muttered. Precisely, and that may be exactly what is needed. The debate consumed the colony for weeks. Half the council wanted to seal the gate, destroy the ruins, and report to Earth that they found nothing. They argued that humanity was not ready for this burden. The other half recognized that ignorance would not protect them. The unraveling was coming whether they prepared or not. Arguments turned into shouting matches. Fights broke out between colonists who believed and those who refused to accept the threat. Governor Miho struggled to maintain order. Finally, Dr. Borum addressed the entire colony in the central square. 2,000 people gathered to hear her speak. She looked tired. The weeks of research and documentation had aged her. I understand the fear, she said. I feel it too, but we cannot decide for all of humanity whether to fight or hide. We can only decide for ourselves. Let Warden Prime teach us. Let us prepare. When the unraveling comes, we face it with knowledge instead of panic. If we are wrong, we waste some time and resources. If we are right and do nothing, we doom not just ourselves, but everyone we have ever known. The vote was close, but Borum's words won. Governor Miho authorized a training program. Warden Prime began converting sections of the ruins into a training facility. Volunteers were called for. Park Jimin was the first to sign up, followed by Security Officer Beck Sujin and Pilot I'm Hejun. Within a week, 30 colonists had volunteered to become humanity's first defenders against an impossible threat. The training was brutal. Progenitor technology interfaced directly with the human nervous system. It felt like fire in the blood, like electricity in the brain. The weapons were designed for species with different biology. Adapting them to human use required pain and patience. Doyen led the training, though he felt completely unqualified. Warden Prime guided him through each lesson. How to perceive reality in multiple dimensions simultaneously. How to manipulate space-time on small scales. How to wear armor that existed partially outside normal space. How to pilot ships that moved through dimensions the unraveling could not follow. They trained for 6 months. Doyen stopped making jokes. Jimin stopped complaining. Sujin became harder, colder, more focused. Hejun learned to fly in ways that defied physics. They all changed. Then, on a cold morning when the training had just begun to feel routine, Warden Prime sensors detected something. The Sentinel called everyone to the main chamber. The holographic display showed the Kepler 442 system. At its edge, near the outermost ice planets, something glowed with wrongness. A fragment of the unraveling has found you, Warden Prime said simply. You are not expected to activate for 700 more years. But the seal breaking sent out a signal across dimensions. It detected that signal. A small piece has come to investigate. They watched through telescopes as the fragment consumed the outer planets. Gas giants simply stopped existing in coherent form. Ice worlds folded into impossible geometries. Automated mining stations transmitted confused data. Then nothing at all. It is coming here, Borum whispered. To the colony. The fragment of the unraveling moved slowly through the Kepler 442 system, but its path pointed directly toward New Horizon Colony. Warden Prime worked without stopping for 3 days, integrating progenitor weapons into 3 colony ships. The ships were never meant for combat. They were cargo haulers, designed to move supplies between planets. Now they would become humanity's first line of defense against something that had destroyed civilizations millions of years more advanced. Kong Doyen suited up in armor that felt alive against the skin. The material interfaced directly with his nervous system, creating a connection that was deeply unsettling. He could feel the ship's systems as if they were extensions of his own body. When the engines powered up, he felt the vibration in his bones. When sensors detected objects in space, the information appeared directly in his mind. Dr. Lee Borum stood in the hangar, watching the preparations with terror written across her face. This is not enough training, she protested to Governor Choi Miho. 6 months versus technology that destroyed entire civilizations. They are going to die out there. It is what we have, Miho replied grimly. If they do not go, we all die here. Pilot Hajun took the helm of the lead ship. His hands moved across controls that looked nothing like standard human technology. Beside him, Kong Doyen coordinated the weapon systems, feeling the massive energy reserves waiting to be unleashed. Engineer Park Jimin managed power distribution across all three vessels, balancing outputs that could vaporize the ships if handled incorrectly. Security Officer Baek Soo-jin commanded the other two ships with volunteers who looked far too young and frightened. They launched from New Horizon while 2,000 colonists watched from the ground. Some prayed, some cried, some simply stared in silence. As the three ships accelerated toward the fragment, Doyen finally saw it with his own eyes instead of through sensors. His breath caught in his throat. The fragment was small compared to the vastness of space, but it was the most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed. It looked like a wound in reality itself. Space around it twisted and bent in ways that hurt to observe. Colors that should not exist flickered at its edges. His enhanced vision, courtesy of the progenitor armor, showed him layers of reality folding over each other like shuffled cards. How do you fight something that does not make sense? Hajun whispered, his voice tight with fear. We improvise, Doyen answered, trying to sound confident. That is what humans do best, remember? The fragment detected them. It changed direction slightly, orienting toward the approaching ships like a predator noticing prey. All ships' weapons ready. Doyen ordered to the communication system. His voice reached the other vessels. Fire on my mark. They closed the weapons' range. Doyen's mind interfaced with the targeting systems. The progenitor weapons were unlike anything humanity had created. They contained distortions of space-time itself, bullets made of twisted reality. Fire! Three ships unleashed their full arsenals. Streams of warp space lanced toward the fragment. When the weapons struck, reality screamed. Alarm shrieked in Doyen's helmet as feedback cascaded through the systems. The fragment convulsed, its impossible geometry shifting and changing. But something unexpected happened. Where the weapons hit, the unraveling recoiled. Not much, but enough to see. It pulled back slightly from the impact points. It can be hurt, Jimin said over the communication channel, disbelief clear in his voice. It actually can be hurt. Of course it can. Warden Prime's voice came through their systems from back at the colony. The progenitors wounded it many times. We simply could never destroy it completely. The fragment struck back. Reality twisted around the ships. Hajun screamed as navigation systems showed them in 17 different locations simultaneously. His screens displayed impossible readings. They were moving forward and backward at the same time, existed in multiple dimensions, occupied spaces that contradicted each other. One of Sujin's ships folded. That was the only word for it. The vessel crumpled like paper being crushed by an invisible hand. Three-dimensional space ceased to exist for that ship and its crew. Metal twisted into geometries that could not exist in normal reality. The 7 people aboard died instantly, their bodies unraveling along with their vessel. Pull back, Doyen ordered, horror flooding through him. But they could not pull back. The fragment was bending space around them, creating a gravity well made of pure chaos. The more power they fed to the engines, the less distance they covered. They were being pulled toward the fragment like insects caught in a web. Baek Soo-jin's remaining ship tried to escape at maximum thrust. The engines overloaded. The ship exploded in a flash of light, killing everyone aboard instantly. 10 more people gone in a heartbeat. We cannot run from it, Hajun said, his voice shaking. We cannot escape. Doyen's mind raced. The progenitors had fought logically, strategically, carefully. They had failed. What would they never try? What would seem too dangerous, too chaotic, too insane? An idea formed. It was possibly the worst idea anyone had ever had. Shut down the shields, Doyen ordered. What? Jimin shouted. That will kill us. Maybe. Or maybe it saves us. The shields protect us from the chaos. But what if we use the chaos itself? Doyen, that makes no sense. Hajun protested. Exactly. Nothing about this makes sense. So we stopped trying to make sense. Before anyone could argue further, Doyen shut down their defensive shields and redirected all power to the engines. Then he did something no progenitor pilot would ever attempt. He flew directly into the distortion zone around the fragment. Physics broke down around them. The ship existed in multiple states. Doyen felt himself dying and living simultaneously. He was young and old, real and unreal, matter and energy. Time moved forward and backward. He saw his own birth and death happening at the same moment. Then, suddenly, they were through, on the other side of the fragment. Fire everything. Doyen shouted, his voice raw. Both remaining ships unleashed every weapon they had. The fragment was caught between them now, taking fire from two directions. The unraveling convulsed violently. Reality stabilized for just a moment around them. The fragment began to retreat, pulling away from the colony, moving back toward deep space. "We did it," Hajun whispered in disbelief. "We actually did it." Victory lasted exactly 10 seconds. Then the feedback from exposure to the chaos hit Doyen. His body convulsed. Blood poured from his nose, his ears, his eyes. The progenitor armor worked frantically to keep him alive, but the damage was catastrophic. He had been exposed to the raw chaos of the unraveling, and it had nearly torn him apart at the molecular level. The ship flew on autopilot back to the colony, while Hajun and Jimin tried desperately to keep Doyen conscious. Medical teams waited at the landing pad. They rushed him to the hospital immediately. Warden Prime observed everything from the ruins. The Sentinel sent a message to Earth, to every human colony, to all of humanity across the stars. The threat is real. The time for denial has ended. Prepare yourselves. The war has begun. Kong Doyen spent 3 months inside a medical pod, while progenitor technology worked to save his life. The exposure to the unraveling had nearly destroyed him at the cellular level. His DNA had been damaged in ways human medicine could not fix. But Warden Prime's ancient technology could rebuild what was broken, though the process was slow and painful. Dr. Lee Borum visited him every single day. She sat beside the pod and talked to him, even though he could not respond. The pod kept him in a state between sleep and consciousness. She told him about everything happening in the galaxy, about how the world was changing faster than anyone imagined possible. Earth's governments had finally believed the threat was real. For years, they had dismissed reports from New Horizon as exaggeration or misunderstanding. But when the fragment attacked, when 17 people died defending the colony, when the battle footage reached Earth, everything changed. Panic swept across human space. Then panic turned into action. Humanity mobilized like never before. Every resource, every scientist, every military force focused on a single goal: survival. They began searching for the other sealed gates that Warden Prime had mentioned. The Sentinel had said the progenitors planted gates on thousands of worlds with evolutionary potential. Surely more existed in human-controlled space. Within 6 months, 17 more gates were found. Some were buried deep underground on mining colonies. Others stood in plain sight on newly explored worlds, mistaken for natural rock formations. One was discovered at the bottom of an ocean, on a water world. Another floated in the debris field, a shattered moon. Each gate was activated. 17 more Sentinels awakened from their million-year sleep. Each one began the same mission: training humans to fight the unraveling. By the time Doyen finally emerged from the medical pod, the galaxy looked completely different. He stood on shaky legs, supported by medical staff. His body felt wrong, stronger but strange. His senses perceived things they should not be able to detect. He could feel electromagnetic fields. He could see slightly into other dimensions. The progenitor technology had saved his life, but it had changed him fundamentally. He was still human, but enhanced in ways that made him something more. Governor Choi Miho visited him in the medical facility. The governor looked older, more tired. The stress of the past months showed in new lines on his face. "The colonial leadership wants you to command the Guardian Corps," Miho said without preamble. "All 17 Sentinel sites are training soldiers. Someone needs to coordinate them. Someone who has actually fought the unraveling and survived." "I am just an engineer who touched a gate as a joke," Doyen protested weakly. "I am not a military commander." Dr. Borum, standing nearby, shook her head. You are exactly what we need. You improvise when the progenitors would have followed rigid strategy. You survive when logic said you should die. That is what humanity needs now. Someone who can think beyond the rules. Doyen looked at his hands. They appeared normal, but felt different. He could sense the energy flowing through the medical equipment around him. He could feel the subtle vibrations of the colony's power systems. He was not the same person who had joked with Park Jimin about touching ancient artifacts. He accepted the position. The Guardian Corps grew rapidly over the next year. Thousands of volunteers from every human colony joined. They trained with progenitor technology at 17 different sites. Each Sentinel taught similar lessons, but with variations based on their specializations. Some Sentinels focus on weapons technology. Others specialize in defensive systems or dimensional navigation. Park Jimin became one of the leading engineers. He developed new variations of progenitor shields that could partially stabilize reality even when the unraveling touched it. His innovation saved countless lives in later battles. Pilot Im Ha-jun pioneered flying techniques that seemed suicidal but proved effective. He learned to navigate through the chaos itself, using the instability as a form of propulsion. Other pilots studied his methods, though few could match his skill. Security Officer Baek Soo-jin created new combat doctrines. She studied how the progenitors fought and identified their weaknesses. The progenitors had been too cautious, too unwilling to accept casualties. They tried to save everyone and ended up losing everything. Soo-jin's approach was harder, accepting that some losses were necessary to achieve victory. It was a brutal philosophy, but effective. But humanity did not face the unraveling alone. Other species across the galaxy had their own sealed gates. As the unraveling grew more active, more gates activated. 16 other intelligent species found themselves awakened to the same ancient threat. First contact between humans and the Velen species happened during a battle. Both races responded to an unraveling fragment, threatening a neutral star system. At first, they nearly fought each other, each thinking the other was an enemy. Then they realized they faced a common threat and worked together to drive off the fragment. Kong Doyen met Ambassador Velana on the battlefield. She was tall and graceful. Her species evolved from ocean dwellers on a high-gravity world. Through translators, they communicated after the battle ended. Separately, our species will fail, she said, her translated words formal but sincere. The progenitors proved that even advanced civilizations fall alone. Together, we might survive. Within 5 years, a new alliance formed. 16 species, all awakened by sealed gates, united against the unraveling. They called themselves the New Guardian Alliance, honoring the progenitors who came before. The alliance was not as technologically advanced as the progenitors had been, but it had something the ancient species lacked: diversity of thought. 16 different ways of solving problems. 16 different combat philosophies. 16 different approaches to the impossible. Doyen became one of the senior commanders, coordinating defense operations across multiple sectors. He was no longer the joking engineer from New Horizon. The responsibility had changed him. The burden of command weighed heavy. Dr. Borum led the scientific effort. She studied progenitor technology and made breakthroughs the ancient species never achieved. Her greatest discovery came 3 years after Doyen emerged from a medical pod. The unraveling is not infinite, she announced to the Guardian Council. It has a source, a point of origin where it first entered our galaxy. Warden Prime, attending the council meeting through holographic projection, confirmed her theory. The progenitors debated searching for the origin, but by the time we had resources to attempt it, we were already losing the war. We chose defensive positions instead. Then we do what they could not, Doyen declared. We find where it came from, and we end this permanently. The mission would require penetrating deep into the galactic void, through regions where the unraveling had already consumed reality. It was effectively a suicide mission. Survival probability was calculated at less than 5%. Volunteers stepped forward anyway. Park Jimin volunteered immediately. So did Im Ha-jun and Baek Soo-jin. Ambassador Velana joined, bringing the best warriors from her species.